Interfaith Sanctuary is moving ahead with their plans to move their old shelter to the old Salvation Army building on State Street. Now, Interfaith already owns the new building, but they haven't received a conditional use permit from the city of Boise, which is required to use the building as a new shelter. So what happens if the new permit is not approved? Where will guests end up? Our Katya Stepovic found out that hundreds of people could be back living on the streets.
Penny Beach is the chief medical officer with Family Medicine Residency of Idaho. She took to Facebook this week to ask for a helping hand from the community.
The reason I wrote the Facebook post is that I'm not sure people are aware if Interfaith does not get this conditional use permit, they will be closing their doors next summer. They serve 200 homeless people every night. It's the only low barrier shelter in town. Boise Rescue Mission does a great job also helping out with this population, but they have more rules regarding who can come to the shelter. So if Interfaith closes, there will be 200 more homeless people sleeping on the street starting next summer.
She says right now the city of Boise is looking over Interfaith's application for a conditional use permit to operate as a shelter. She also says right now the city needs to hear from community members on the matter.
In the winter, there is a real risk of this population freezing to death. That's why Interfaith was established in 2005. It was because there was a homeless person who died on the streets of Boise freezing to death. So we cannot let these 200 beds go away.
Beach says in her line of work, she cares for a lot of homeless patients. And if Interfaith had to shut their doors, that would exacerbate the situation in Idaho's already overwhelmed hospitals.
Without Interfaith, we don't have anywhere to discharge a patient who might have chronic medical problems like congestive heart failure or some kind of wound on their leg. So what would end up happening is we would keep that patient in the hospital for many more days, sometimes weeks, just to make sure they were safe to be discharged to the street, which would result in not only higher healthcare premiums, but just less room for people at our hospitals in town.
The battle between shelter supporters and concerned neighbors over the proposed State Street location continues.
I have a great deal of sympathy for the neighbors. I think they have totally valid concerns. And actually, I'm not in favor of big emergency shelters.
She thinks the solution to getting those experiencing homelessness back on their feet is to find housing for them first and supportive services to follow.
And I would like to see large emergency shelters go away altogether, but we don't have anything to bridge the gap between now and that solution, which will probably take a good 5 to 10 years considering the lack of housing in Boise.
I never knew that it would be facing such challenges, and I'm stunned by it. So I'm heartbroken and scared.
Many neighbors wonder why the shelter purchased the building before having a permit.
Because you can't submit for a conditional use permit for a building until you own it.
Peterson Steiger says the new owners of Interfaith's current building downtown will vacate them from the property if Interfaith does not make any progress with the new building in the next 12 months.
But the board has decided that if this conditional use permit does not go through for this building, that Interfaith Sanctuary will shut its doors because there's nowhere else to go.
As of now, the future of Interfaith is in the hands of the city.
This building was zoned to be a shelter. And so the only reason why it wouldn't make it through this process is A, we're not listening to the recommendations needed for the conditional use permit, or there's discrimination or something else going on that's greater than anything Interfaith Sanctuary can do.
I think that this conditional use permit needs to be approved, and I think they need to go to State Street until we can figure out a solution, kind of a more long-term solution.
Well, you laid it out for us, Katya. A lot on the line here, and I'm curious, what's next in the permitting process?
Well, we know that Planning and Zoning is currently looking over Interfaith's application internally, but coming up on November 15th, they will announce that their decision during a public hearing. Then, if anyone has an appeal, they can either appeal in person or write into the city. But here's the thing, the appeal must claim that Planning and Zoning specifically has done something procedurally incorrect. So on November 15th, Planning and Zoning's decision will be final unless, of course, there is an appeal.
Katya will keep us informed as it goes on. Thank you very much, Katya Stepovic, reporting.